Hey, it's Travis. Too many camp directors run just on gut feel. Our free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic is your dashboard for resilience. Take it today at camp.mba/Travis. Again, that's camp.mba/Travis. What do you need to do right now to build a summer camp staff that you will be in love with for the next 10 years?
This is CampHacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
A big thanks to our sponsors who make the CampHacker podcast possible. You don't lead camp because you love the office, right? UltraCamp has everything you need to manage your program so you can spend more time doing what you love. Manage staff, register campers, take payments, and direct communication all in one place. Find out more at ultracampmanagement.com/camphacker. Great scheduling is the backbone of every camper's experience. But when there's a staffing change, it's almost impossible to fill that role with someone who knows all the nuances a schedule takes. Come check Camptivities out, specifically designed for camps by camp people. Find out more at camptivities.com.
Hello, Camp Mavericks, and welcome to the CampHacker podcast brought to you by UltraCamp and Camptivities. I'm Travis Allison. I'm a summer camp marketing and strategy consultant, and I'm excited to be here with you all today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Hudson. I am the founder and camp director of Camp Highlight, a sleepaway camp for children of LGBTQ parents. And Oprah recently said it is the best camp she's ever heard of.
And my name is Gabrielle Rail, and I'm one of the camp directors of Camp Oro. Camp Oro is an all-girls camp in the Laurentian Mountains, and we focus on creating a positive environment for all gender minorities.
And my name is Joe Richards. I'm the executive director at Pierce Williams Summer Camp and Retreat Center, which is a part of the United Church of Canada's camping network of 55 camps across Canada. And we are located about halfway between Detroit and Toronto.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Brandwein from Chicago, and I am a camp staff trainer. I'm a camp leadership team trainer and an author of camp books on leadership, supervising staff, and training staff.
Michael, we're excited to welcome you here. I'm going to come back and ask you a couple of questions, but I just want to draw everybody's attention to a couple of quick things before we get into the meat of the show. Number one, reviews definitely help the show. If they don't bring it to people's attention, at least it gives them a bit of social proof that you folks think the shows are good, not just those of us here recording today. So we would love it if you went to ratethispodcast.com/camp and then click the ratings and reviews button and just leave us a short little rating and review in there. It helps us, I think, to spread the word about camp. Michael, we're so excited to have you. Thank you for joining us.
I am delighted, though so depressed, that Oprah has never said a single thing about me.
It's hard working with Chris sometimes.
The next time I hang out with her, I'll be like, Oprah, please. Oprah, just say something about my friend Michael Brandwein. Well, I'll take care of it.
I had no idea, Chris. I think that's really awesome. Congratulations.
Michael, my tradition is to ask new people on the show how they got involved at summer camp. What's your beginning of camp story?
Wow. Mom. Mom suggested when I was 13 that if as a young magician who could perform for children's birthday parties, the way to learn how to work with kids would be to find people who were good at that and follow them around. So I had been a camper as a child. And now she was suggesting that I be staff at age 13, which was only possible because in Chicago, they had a not-for-profit that provided camp to kids who could not afford camp. And I signed up. I was the last volunteer they accepted. And reluctantly, to be sure, it was good. I always tell people I got the last volunteer T-shirt. It was at that time in my life, I weighed about 80 pounds. My glasses weighed 120 pounds. So I was this little tiny guy, and they gave me the last T-shirt. It was a double extra large. It was great because I didn't have to wear pants all summer. And I was North America's least qualified day camp counselor. And did that when I was 13 and 14, and then started moving up the ranks through staff. So I started as a camper, as many of us did, but I was exposed at a very early age to what it was like to lead other groups of kids, which I consider to be a really lucky thing, and continued to do it since.
Yes, indeed. And your name has come up many times in the show, but this is the first time we've invited you here, not because of your skills, but just because of the way I organize things, and often at the last minute. So I'm grateful that I got a little bit ahead and was able to get you on the calendar, Michael. This has been a topic that we very specifically decided that we wanted to have you on for. So we're grateful you're here.
Thank you. I am looking forward to the discussion.
Indeed. So we wanted to talk today. I think really this is based on things that we're hearing, things we're seeing in summer camp professionals, things that our camp friends have said to us. One of the refrains that came out of the summer of 2022, we're recording this at the end of 2022, and thinking about the 2023 season, but I think this applies no matter what year it is for you when you're listening, that one of the things that we heard is that a lot of people felt like they were starting camp from scratch. There had been at least 1 year off for the vast majority of us, 2 years off for many camps who listen, and 2022 is kind of the first year that most of the industry was back at it. And a thing that I heard commonly was it felt like we were starting from scratch. It felt like the people who were working for us just didn't know the things that we had been used to, anticipating that our staff would just know. When you can pass the traditions down to senior campers who then become CITs and staff, you don't have to remember all those things. And I don't specifically want to talk about program today. We can definitely touch on that, but it's not my biggest focus. I'm really thinking about what it means to plan for starting from scratch with staff. How do you build staff now that, as I said in the opening, you will love for the next 10 years? And so I have a specific couple of questions to get us started, and then we'll see where the discussion goes. The first thing I wanted to start with was the question is, like, what do you think that is something that is key that those new staff members understand? If they haven't made that transition very well from camper to CIT to staff, but what is something you really want, very basic, that you really want staff to understand? And Gab, I want to start with you today. You folks at Waro are super intentional about, everybody on the show is super intentional or you wouldn't be here, but I love Waro's themes and the things that you think about when planning these. What's something that you want to make absolutely sure that new staff or this starting from scratch staff understands?
And I think we're talking about skills a little bit later, but for understanding, for me, it comes down to kindness and forgiveness. Kindness to self, kindness to others, forgiveness to self, forgiveness to others. I'll talk more about some of the skill sets, but if we're starting from scratch, we're going to be making a lot of mistakes, and we want our staff to make mistakes because that means they're trying, they're growing, et cetera, et cetera. But what blocks not only one's personal growth is that really harsh inner monologue that stops them from trying. And what stops a group from trying and growing and building trust is that lack of understanding that it's okay that you're not perfect. And so for me, that's something that I find really, really an integral part to our staff training, building our team, that this is our main goal. And if you are singing a song for the first time and you've messed up the words and the whole group, joins and laughs or, joins in that experience, that's the type of camp I want to be part of, instead of that staff member that can do it absolutely perfectly. And that they support each other. And if we can teach that, if we can do that as a team, then I think our campers are going to really benefit from that. So for me, it's kindness and forgiveness to yourself and to others.
Gab, can I ask you to clarify something?
Yeah.
Picturing that staff member who messes up in front of the group. I think some people, when you're talking about laughs along, I wonder if some people in the back of their head are thinking that group is laughing at, but you're not, you don't seem to be saying that.
No. I think sometimes, you get a little bit embarrassed and everybody's sort of laughing in the sense of like, you got this, like encouraging it, or, or just going along with it, but absolutely not laughing at the person. But I think that also the goal by the end of staff training is that we're able to laugh together.
Sure.
But the beginning is truly that genuine kindness and gentleness that we need for each other, our teammates and ourselves.
That's great. Thank you for starting us off that way. Michael, what is something that you would really want a staff to deeply understand as they take on this job?
Oh, easy question. One word: mission. A 4-word question to implement it. Why are we here?
Yeah.
And that's what you start with, and that's what you pre-start with, and that's what you follow up to what you start with. I was a persuasive communication major at university. One of the things my brilliant teachers, Ruth Ann Clark and Joe Wenzel, taught me was that one of the ways you unify a group is to identify a common purpose, a common value. And what Gabs has said is, by identifying things like being kind and forgiving, et cetera, these are common values. What we want to do, I think, is answer the question, why are we running camp in the first place? And that's what unifies everybody. And I want to do that when I'm looking for staff. I want to tell people I'm looking for people who are going to build great kids. This is how we define great kids. What do you think about that? And we want to do that, of course, through training. And we want to hammer this every day they are here at camp. Mission is going to drive every choice that we make. I'm a detail person, Travis, so I'll give details. One example of this is that I always insist, this is just my opinion, but when asked my opinion, I always insist you start with the mission. The very first thing you do in staff training. You don't introduce the new assistant director. You don't welcome everyone. And you don't even say, well, I'm so excited for you to be here. You don't. You just burst out in front of them the minute you're ready to start, and you answer the question, this is why we're here. If you can do it, my job is to create creative and interesting and exciting different ways to do that every year. But anyone can make these up themselves. But we want to start by unifying everybody with a common purpose. And this is not so easy because most people look at camp as this collection of activities and things on the schedule.
Absolutely.
So what we want to do is to let them know, no, we're using these activities as a tool in order to do something that is world changing, which is to affect the character and the qualities that people have.
Amazing. Thank you. Joe, what's for you something that you need them to understand?
Well, Michael has taught us over the years, and that we, as you know, Travis, and many people know, our mission statement or reason for being is that all of our staff buy in to do what needs to be done, right? That's the job description. That's the mission, to do what needs to be done to give the campers the most amazing camp experience. I wonder if, after last year's experience with staff, that I actually need to start with what needs to be done. And one simple thing, and this was, we do a reading at the beginning of every board meeting that we have here at Pierce Williams, and the reading last month was an old ACA reading from 2009, and the basic premise is, why do kids return to camp? Kids return to camp because of friends, and that is in thinking about walking back down the lane today before lunch to come and do the podcast. I was like, how do I train my staff next May during our first training weekend? And that, if you start with that premise, to them, that sounds easier than giving them all of those details that they need to do. And so by saying, your job is to do what needs to be done, and the most important thing that needs to be done is to help kids make friends and be friends. You're still going to need to supervise. You're still going to need to take care of safety and do all of these things. But in the end, this is why we are here. And this is why, and I think that it's the other part to this is that the most important thing for my staff next summer is going to be giving them I often talk about this illusion of choice with campers and with staff, right? That they get the illusion that they're getting to choose something, and then that gets more buy-in. And I think that we need to give staff more more of a role in what they're trained on, but it's really an illusion because we want to train them on the same things they're going to want to be trained on. But because they come with so little experience to us, it can help them take better ownership over the things that they bring up. And in reality, we've already planned for these, right? And for us, it's just a matter of slotting them differently. But, I think that giving them the basic questions, why are we here, right? What do you need? And what does this team need? Those 3 questions will get us a long way on the first night of training. They'll know the mission. They'll know they're here to make friends. We ask them the 3 questions, and we sort of treat it like they get to make the training schedule, which for us is easier because we do a weekend training in May, which is only 2 nights, and then we do our week training in July. So I have another month and a half to sort of fit everything they feel they want in.
That's great. Thank you. What do you think, Chris? What is something you need your staff to understand?
I'm going to keep this short because the 3 geniuses who went right before me summed up a lot of what I was going to say. But one, yes. And this is a crisis at Camp Highlight this summer because we have to seriously overhaul how we select staff. Michael's always right. Pretty much is starting with the mission. You need people on board who understand they're not just here for a summer job. They understand they're creating something. Right? They are part of this large legacy, and they are giving something of themselves to other people. I want to keep this short because I know we have a lot more to talk about. But what I'm really looking for in staff is creativity, flexibility, and responsibility. And maybe we can talk about this later, but because of our societal awareness of trauma and secondary trauma and traumatizing events, to echo something Gab said, is the staff is terrified of making mistakes because should they, apply the rules in this way or do this or do that? Are they traumatizing this child? In so far that these young people as well, who are also dealing with all of that, these young people are afraid to take risks to the point where they're not really doing their jobs. So I think those are the 2 things I'd really rest on is that 1, they have to understand the mission. And 2, this idea of mistakes, how to make mistakes, what's really damaging to children and what people can move on from. Like those things I want them to understand.
I definitely have heard lots of folks talking about staff feeling overwhelmed by choices and the thing just being stuck because they feel so overwhelmed by that.
I have to say, my staff, I would say to them, have you thought about doing this? Well, that wasn't in the handbook. The handbook is already 140 pages long. Everything can't go in there. That's why you're here to make those decisions. But again, they're afraid to make those choices because should they make the wrong choice? Are they bad? Will they be canceled? Did they damage someone? This is all young people today. They've only existed in environments where those are the consequences for saying or doing the wrong thing.
Right.
Chris, can I give you a line that I use to help with that? Because what you said resonates. It's so consistent with what I've heard from directors all over the place about people being afraid to do this. If it's not on the checklist, they're afraid to move beyond it. Instead of just telling them, you can make mistakes and everyone makes mistakes and that's how we learn, we can approach it from the point of view of mission and say, if our mission is to teach young people how to have successful, healthy, and joyous lives, one of the most important things to teach them is what to do when you make mistakes and how to be an imperfect person. So what I've learned to do, and if you'd asked me this 25 years ago, I wouldn't have had this, but what I've learned in the last 10 years is that the best way to approach this is to say, if we could be perfect, and my friends, we cannot be, but if we were perfect, we would rob young people of the opportunity of learning what to do when you're an imperfect person. So we don't do them a favor by following the schedule flawlessly or knowing exactly what to say when somebody pushes another person because they, lost their temper. We don't help the kids doing that. And if you can control your patience and your volume, and you never raise your voice or do anything that we don't want us to do with kids, then you don't get the opportunity to say, whoops, I started to raise my voice because I am so ticked off. This is the third time we've talked about this, and I know you folks can do better than that. Let me take a minute. I'm going to go get a sip of water, and then I want to sit down, and I want to see how you feel about it when we're at each other's faces like this. Well, think of everything that's being modeled when we do that. You take a breath, you take a sip of water, you think about what you want to say, you control your volume, you ask questions instead of just, lecturing people. And that makes this less about, the staff's behavior, and more about this is another great tool that we can use to benefit young people.
I agree. And one of, certainly a friend of the show's, Dr. G, Deb Gilboa, says, and I love this quote of hers, I love this framing of hers, when you make a mistake, not if you make a mistake. We always say when you make a mistake because we acknowledge that everybody will. And that helps set up folks, I think, for the understanding that from the supervisors, from their boss's perspective, we understand that they will make mistakes. And as Michael said, we can turn that into just examples of how to handle mistakes. We're the ones doing it. Thinking about my answer to this question, something that they need to understand, I think my answer is probably too intimidating for the first day of staff training, but it is something that I want them to understand before the end of it. I think the best leaders understand that they are always teaching, that whether or not they are on, whether or not they're in a mode, people are watching them and people are learning from them. That's intimidating as a young leader, a new leader, or someone who doesn't feel confident in the particular kind of leadership that they're doing. I acknowledge that. And I think we can get our way to help them practice to get more comfortable with that. But I think the best kind of camp programs, the best kind of leaders, not just camp leaders, understand that they're setting an example, they're teaching people something, that the way they handle things when they're not on, when they're not doing an announcement, when they're not teaching, is also a lesson. And I acknowledge we don't start there, but I think it's a thing that you want them to understand the first day when parents arrive, if the buses arrive, the campers arrive for flagpole, whatever it is, that's a something that we want them to understand. Is anything else anybody want to understand for kind of a basic, you need to understand this thing before I move to the second question?
We could do a whole episode on, I think, the generational divide.
Sure.
But just quickly, the expectations of an employer are something that I thought I wouldn't have to go over with employees. And I just mean like basic expectations, such as the work is yours to do. I do not need to supervise you. I, 2 or 3 levels above you, do not need to supervise line staff. And the fact that you're asking me as the director to supervise you, like, you have to understand that that's not the expectation. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone listening, but I found the one thing I really want people to understand is what their role is generally, but also, and I don't mean this to be condescending, how jobs work. I find there is a lot of work that needed to be done this year, and we just took it for granted. And these young people were not either comfortable or knowledgeable with how supervision worked, with how to escalate, with how to give or receive feedback, and basic stuff like when to show up for things and why that's important. So I'm just going to put that out there.
Well, I think that's fair. I think that in the last few years, camp becomes a lot of our staff's first job. So they don't have the basics. Years before that, people might have done babysitting. They might have had, lawn cutting job. They might have had a McDonald's job. But I think that as society is changing and certainly the world is changing around the young adults that work at camp, a lot of them are coming with no experience or understanding of what a job is and all of those things. So I think it's fair to break that down and say, this is what it means. This is who you go to for help. This is what you do when you're stuck. This is all those things. So I like that.
I think there's also for me in that it is setting realistic expectations for yourself. And I think that there has been a knowledge gap. There is an experience gap. I think we're experiencing that. And perspective is very difficult to learn in any job if you're not seeing the other side of it. And with these gaps that we're having that 17-year-old, 18-year-old comes in now as the 19-year-old, but they didn't have that experience as the 17-year-old, and that 18-year-old showing them a little bit behind the scenes. They're really jumping 2 seasons ahead. I think that we're setting ourselves up for failure if we're hoping that, okay, I'm going to just go back to the type of team I had in 2019. I think having that awareness that sort of perspective is going to take time. For me, the trick is, how do we help ourselves with being patient with that perspective, and how do we help our staff members with that frustration? Because when you're lacking perspective, sometimes it feels like you're fighting against somebody. So how are you able to bring people into the circle? How are you able to show them the behind the scenes? How can you implement that within your program, within your training, before your training? How can transparency be, as you said, Travis, we're always teaching, so are we. So how can we as camp leaders bring them in on the fold, and then set actual tangible goals for ourselves with our team, that this year, this is the type of perspective we're hoping our whole team are going to understand how the kitchen runs. And the next year, this is what we're trying to aim for. It's just because there's gaps, and it's going to take a couple of years to catch up. But there's also opportunity to shift things that we might want to shift.
That's why we're talking today.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
why we're introducing. We're not going to get through this topic. Like we will never cover everything that needs to be, but we want to introduce it and have some thoughtful discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But I think those gaps are an important part for us to recognize, because those aren't just gaps from missing 2 summers at camp. Those are gaps because society is changing around us. And part of this is the amount of respect that high school students show to their teachers seems a lot less now than it used to be. And this is a conversation I've had for the past 5 years with my kids, right? When they call a teacher by a nickname and they're like, well, the teacher wants me to call him this. And you're like, well, ma'am, sir, Mr. Chesney, right? All of those are appropriate, but to call, and I think that part of society is doing disservice to that person's future, because they're treating employers like their buddies from school, right? Our responsibilities are, right, who we're responsible to and our expectations. But on that is this idea that you need to bend with the wind, right? If you're a tree that doesn't bend as this wind is blowing at us, you will break and you will be useless to us. But we as trees need to bend with the wind that's coming at us, and that will make us stronger and help these youth in our settings as well, because we're preparing them. And I still believe that camp directors do this better than almost anything else in the world. We're preparing the youth that work with us to be better people in society, and move out and give them that mission and goal-oriented thing as they go out and about.
We're grateful to the folks at Camptivities for sponsoring the CampHacker podcast. The thing is, you know what this experience is like. You end the call, your mind is spinning. Who can do all the scheduling? Who can manage all these people? Get these campers to the right spaces at the right time? Where will you find the time to train the person who can pull all this together for you? You have to think about the nuances and the details just to make sure that your schedules go out the way that you need them to and the way that your families expect them to. The only people who know anything about scheduling at your camp already have a ton on their plate. So does this mean that you have to spend a lot of late nights each week getting the scheduling done? You can quickly search Google for Camp Activity Scheduler and you come across Camptivities. Camptivities is an activity scheduler for camps by camp people. As you click the link, you're already thinking, this would never work for our camp. But the thing is, you begin to explore it anyway. You find group scheduling, camper scheduling, batch scheduling. Now things are starting to get interesting to you. You see also in there that there's manual adjustments. You can schedule electives. There's tons of customizable settings, and there's 50 plus reports that you can work with to make the job easier for you and your staff. You're thinking to yourself now, this might actually save us a ton of time. When you think about your organizational continuity, you should stop just relying on that just one person who has the magic touch to pull it all together. Instead, move to Camptivities. They'd love to show you the next big thing in camp. Don't wait. Start the onboarding process now when you have the time before you get panicked about scheduling and pulling it all together. Visit camptivities.com to set up a time to chat with them. Let them help you get away from your desk and back out at camp. Thank you to Camptivities for sponsoring the CampHacker podcast. The next thing that is, it's not more practical, it's just something that's a little maybe more easy to understand or easy to hold on to as a camp leader who's thinking about stuff starting from the beginning. What is something that when you finish training, you need them to be able to do? And what do you need them to do when staff training is over? And I'll start us off just to give you folks some time to think about that. I need staff to be able to solve problems. And that's a big task. It is a thing that takes a ton of work. I don't know if it's just a society education wise, we're teaching to a test instead of teaching to big ideas or to ask big questions. I don't know why it is, but being able to break down a problem into parts that you can take on one at a time, thinking about it, how can we get them to be problem solvers along the way? Things that I've mentioned before, and I think apply to this, is going to your supervisor, not coming to your supervisor until you can say, I have tried this way to solve this problem. So just setting the boundary that we need to you have our permission to try to solve this problem with these parameters, and then if that doesn't work, then come to your supervisor. But I think the other part of it is encouraging a culture of problem solving, creating a place that is part of our pride in what we do, is that we solve problems, and we take on big problems, we think big. And I really encourage camps to think about how can you set aside a chunk of time in training to practice the art of problem solving. And if you can't set aside 2 hours, whiteboards and sticky notes and developing the right questions and then going from there, can you do something like a culture of 2-second lean, that it's everybody's responsibility to change or improve something at camp that saves 2 seconds every day. You're not trying to change the world. You're thinking about 2-second ways that we can get from flagpole to the beach after the buses leave. Just something that saves camp 2 seconds every day. That's just a way to begin to practice, to identify problems and to problem solve them. So that for me is one of the things. There's lots of ways, and I think we could spend a lot more time on how we teach that, but that's a thing that I want them to be able to do. What do you want, Chris? What do you want them to be able to do?
I feel like a broken record. Also, I feel like Ebenezer Scrooge, because the answer I want to say is their jobs.
Okay.
What I want for the staff is to be mission driven. I want them to see the big picture. I want them to understand their actions and their attitude in the fabric of what we're doing, which is a lot to ask young people to sort of extrapolate and think outside of themselves, because we're told physiologically that's difficult for them to do. But that's what I want them to be able to do, is to understand, like, I know that you are stressed out. I know that this kid has been difficult for this week. I understand that. However, like, you snapping or walking off or doing all these other things doesn't go with the mission, and it's not helping the situation. That's not what we're here to do. That's what I want them to really focus in on. I think the perspective taking, I'm speaking from experience, I think the perspective taking has been a little lacking.
Thank you. Michael, do you have a jumping off point with mission, or is there something other that you would say you would want them to be able to do before the kids arrive?
Well, I'm all about identifying what being a professional person who holds down a job requires.
Yeah.
And defining those in terms of not qualities, but doing what I always say, going from Q to C, from qualities to conduct. So, for example, several people have just said quite wisely, we're seeing a gap, and I love the word gap, Gabs. That's a great way to describe it. There's a gap in, say, responsibility. So the thing when you're a trainer. So if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And when I'm a trainer, when I hear what you've said, then I say, then what we need to do is to teach them 3 things that responsible people say. And 3 things that people who are good team players say, and work on those specific behaviors. And that is a part of what we're training them to do. That's why I stopped using the word orientation years ago. I mean, I have people who I highly respect who use it, and that's not at all. I feel terrible that anyone heard that as a criticism. But it's what we're doing is more than orientation, which is kind of where things are and how it works and policies and procedures. What we're doing is in the number of, fill in the blank, the number of days you have to train your staff, you're helping them grow to be ready to do this very challenging job. I have said so often that youth development people define youth up to 25 or 26 years old. So if youth development is the mission of camp, I believe it is, then one of the things we do when staff show up is to, regardless of where they come to us. Let's say, and Chris, what you said, I've heard from dozens and dozens of camp directors. They come up, they don't have basic job skills. I love your example of they don't even know when to show up. So if you say this is we're going to have a 7:45 a.m. staff meeting, and so they'll walk in at 10 minutes to 5 minutes late and don't even understand that's an event. They don't get that. So that's not their fault. They're not just saying, I think I'm going to be a lazy bum this summer. No one has taught them that. Whereas your parents and my parents may have taught us, Michael, if you are called to a meeting by your boss at 7:45, you reset your watch and you show up 5 minutes early. If you show up on time, you're 5 minutes late. If people haven't heard that bit of wisdom and their grandfather hasn't told them that year after year, they don't know this. So, I love, Gabs, what you said about patience. But one of the things we have to be patient, just like we're patient with our campers. They don't know how to get on a horse or turn a canoe or get into the canoe safely, or how to lob a tennis ball, because they've only just started to play tennis. So what we have to do, though, it seems it's like such a burden, is to identify the behaviors that we need to teach them. Understand we can't teach all of them, but just think of what the basic ones are. Can I give you a fast example of how I would do it? What you do is you give them all a paper bag, a big grocery bag, in groups of 4. And you put a lot of junk in there, just objects, like say 7 objects. A tennis ball, a dirty sock, a pencil, a crumbled up ball of paper, some adhesive tape, that sort of stuff. And then you say to that group of 4, now, what I want you to do is I'll give you 10 or 15 minutes, invent a game using the things in the bag. But I want you to teach it to another group of 4. In order to teach it, you're going to have to make some decisions, and then talk to them about what, and they'll be familiar with this from school, what the metrics, I think, is the word metrics? It just flew out of my head. The rubric. They're very familiar with rubric. This is how you're going to be, evaluated. For example, does everyone have an equal opportunity to teach, or does one person just explain it while everyone's standing around? How many people, ideas were used, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then what I would do is I put up on the flip chart, there are certain phrases that we prize during these discussions. One of them is just 4 words. What do you think? Variations of that are, how would you do it? What's your idea? What part of this do you want to do? Do you want to switch? These are questions that great collaborators ask. And, we've been around, the five of us have been around people who are great team players. And the reason we conclude they are is because they use language like that. So what you do is you set up the expectations in advance and you post these on posters all over the room. What do you think? Do you want to switch? What would you like to do? Those kinds of things. And you keep pointing to them and shouting at people during their discussions. Are you saying this? Are you doing that? Have you heard people say this? This way, they are learning a whole bunch of things at one time. They're learning, of course, creativity skills and improvisation skills. They're learning how to teach other people because they have to teach this game that didn't exist before they made it up to another group. And most importantly, they had to act like professionals. If they all talk at one time, then, people are going to not feel good about this experience, or they won't feel that they were heard. And then, of course, afterwards, we need to talk to them about how they felt about this. And did they feel that they were working well together? What did you hear people say or do that caused you to believe that they were acting professionally? Let's just accept finally that, yes, they don't know what professional means like prior staffs may have known. But this is nothing new. What we need to do is define it for them and help them practice it. And there are ways you can do it in 5, 10, and 15-minute bursts that will help them then model these very same kind of skills for our campers. We have to learn these kind of things too.
And I appreciate, Michael, that you're going so far as to providing them with a script. Our friend Dr. Jenselke said something once to me that stuck with me for so long, is that there are certain people, and it's to generalize, it's more people who haven't had a job, for whom they need a social script to get started. And, if they have no idea how to work on a project other than collaborating on a Google Doc for school, and they don't know how to do a group project, then we're providing them, as Michael said, just give them the script.
I'm a big believer. I actually have a term for it that will surprise nobody. I call it scripting. And you do that with kids, and you do it with staff too. How do you script? When a kid says, I don't know, there is an appropriate one sentence that you can memorize instead of saying, well, you should know, or calling on someone else. Anytime a camper says to you, I don't know, which is just one word, IDUNNO, when they say I don't know or shrug, a professional response is to say, okay, let's find out. And then start asking them some questions so that kids don't believe that when they say, I don't know, the teacher goes away. That's what often they learn in school. So there is a professional response to something that kids will say multiple times every day. Teach them what it is. Have them practice that with a partner for 60 seconds. Treat this like, for some people, it's another language. They don't know how to do it. My favorite example of that, folks, is patience. It was a revelation to me. I feel dumb about this, frankly, but it was only 5 years ago that I realized that people who are patient, who grew up in patient homes or had patient teachers, know what patient people say. But in my last 5, 6, maybe years of training, I've actually done an activity in which the product of it is that we memorize 4 things that patient people say. They say, take your time. They say, don't rush. They say, go slow. They say it doesn't have to be perfect, etc. And we practice saying this like it was a camp song. And we actually do an activity where you have to have your partner do something. And your whole job is to just say those 4 sentences in all different random mixed order so that you practice saying what patient people say.
Amazing. Thank you. Joe, what do you think are some things you need them to be able to do on the day that the first campers arrive?
I need them to be able to see into the future, even if it is only 10 seconds, even if it's only 2 seconds. One of the things that I learned, not through patience, as Michael just talked about, but by being a farm kid and standing next to someone working on something, is you need to learn to anticipate. And anticipate is seeing into the future. What you're doing for your fellow workers, what you're doing for your campers is you're anticipating their needs. And when my dad needed a wrench, it would be great if I had it in my hand and could hand it to him, because I knew that after he did this thing, he would then tighten this bolt. right? And that anticipating something is a learned skill. And a lot of our young people only think about themselves. They don't think outside of themselves. And the idea of seeing into the future, that 1 second, that 2 seconds, right? Like when someone is up and talking about bus bins for how we clear plates, it would be handy to have a bus bin ready to hand them when they go to show it, right? It would be handy to anticipate what that when somebody is mopping the floor, that you don't let your campers walk through it, right? Like all of these things. And I it's funny to think about it as seeing into the future, but that's exactly what it is. You're even for that 5 or 10 seconds reminds me of an idea for a book I had, which is you can imagine that you're a person who can see into the future 1 second for every year you've aged, right? So you wouldn't notice it in your child, right? That they can see 5 seconds into the future, right? When they're 5, but you might start noticing it when they're 20 and you're like, oh, why do they do things this way? Because it's just an idea I have in the Mind of Joe books. But the idea of anticipating, I need them to know that when somebody needs help or what their role is, they're anticipating what is needed. Oh, registration starts tonight, so we need to move picnic tables into their spots, right? And all of that is just learned skills. But if they can see into the future, even those 2, 3 to 10 seconds, it is something I need my staff and that all of the other staff will be so appreciative of if they do it correctly.
I love that one. How about for you guys?
I think when we're talking about this subject of like what we need our staff to do, I think what keeps popping up in my head or what I keep experiencing is this duality of maybe some of my frustrations with some of the staff that I had and me trying to be empathetic and understanding where they're coming from. And this anxiety of wanting them to be able to do certain things so that they do feel good about themselves and that they're able to build confidence and team and et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, this question is just, it keeps flickering in my brain as something that I don't want to put in a context of what I need from them. I think for me, I feel comfortable putting in the context, what's necessary for me to create a space for them to X, Y, and Z. And one of the things talking to some of my returning staff from last year, I hosted this task force and really talked about trust. Because what I've been feeling is a very strong lack of trust between leadership and staff, which is something that I've never really struggled with as much before. Of course, I always have to earn people's trust every year. That's my challenge. That's my that's part of my job, and I'm happy to take that. But trust is just such a difficult thing that I found. And one of my staff members really smartly said is that she thinks that her experience is that staff members feel manipulated when you're trying to give positive feedback, or if you're even trying to validate, oh, I hear that was really difficult for you. I'm so sorry. The reaction is you're trying to manipulate me to get my guard down so that you're going to just tell me what to do next. And you just don't want me to get upset. And this is something that rang true for me. So if I was to say, what do I need my staff to be able to do? What skill sets? I think truly it is trying to be realistic with what we want our staff members to be able to accomplish. So is it acting responsibly, being a team player, kindness, forgiveness? Choose 2 or 3 that's what you're focusing on. Make those experiential, because we know that experiences is if our body is doing something, then we can experience it. And lastly, how can I be present during all of those times so that I am also doing the paper bag activity and building that I'm not leading it. I'm there with them and I can encourage and I can make mistakes with them. For me, it's trust, but trust is gonna be a lot of intentional work that, of course, works with our mission, of course, works with the goals. But I think it's important for camp professionals, directors, to look at the things that they're maybe the most frustrated with, which I think is a compass that we can pay attention to and say, how can we provide that as an experiential piece? And how can I be part of it? Because at the end of the day, I think some of these issues that we're having is also because there's a resistance, a disconnect, a lack of support. And these are staff members that are stressed out. They don't know how to do, what to do, and they're trying to find their place in the world. And at the same time, there's a lack of trust with leadership. And I think it's being projected onto us, but I think we have an opportunity to connect with them. So I need them to trust, but I need to be there and present and as prepared as possible, so I'm not putting out fires behind the scenes, and do these things experientially with a script. I'm very into a script right now.
That's excellent. I feel like we've talked about the what to do, and we need to come back for how to do it, because we've just teased how to do things. But something you said, Gab, leaves me with the best piece of advice. One, I think the most important piece of advice I would give to a camp leader is, yes, to be involved. Like, sure, you should have someone who's facilitating. It shouldn't necessarily be you as a director. But one of the things, and this comes back to, this is, the deep-seated core of I am always teaching, is that I have been in a lot of training situations where there's one senior staff member teaching something, and then behind all of the staff, there are tables full of other senior staff who are either working on laptops or they are, slow, quietly even, but chatting amongst themselves. And for somehow this camp has exempted them from being a part of this group building that comes from training. So that's my thing. I think we get into how we do these things in another episode, but for me, that's one of the things that I would want to leave you with, is that you need to be in a new building a new culture and staff. You need to be in it. You can't be in the side. Of course, as an executive or a year-round person, there are going to be things that take you away from training, but you need to make up that time with them and be a part of the community that's built, the questions that are asked, the answers, the mission, etc., and do that. So I wonder if each of you has just one little thing. I think we're coming back to this topic. I'd like to come back to this topic with more details on how we do it, but Joe, for you, is there one thing you'd want to leave folks with today?
This is work. This is going to be work. This is not something that's just going to happen, right? As much as I am a believer that I know a lot of stuff, which anybody who knows me knows that I think I know a lot of stuff. The reality is, like, my notes that I took from this session are, how do I explore these things in staff interviews? Right? How do I get at it before I have to deal with them in a work environment? Right? And I think that work is, if you had a foundation before the pandemic, I think that this work will be less arduous. But I think that it's still going to be, you can't always do it the way you've done it, and you need to make sure to give your staff moving forward some say in what they need. Whether you call it the illusion of choice, which I never say that to the people that I'm doing it with, but the idea that you know what they need to be trained on, but we also don't know what they think they need to be trained on. We hope they're the same thing, but be ready for the work.
Thanks, Joe. Chris, a thought to leave us with?
I feel like we have an embarrassment of riches on this podcast right now, because I feel like everyone here is so smart and we've really thought this through. I don't know if I can add anything other than I think, I'm always Chicken Little when it comes to staffing in camps, because I'm always like, listen, I always tell camp directors, if we don't get this right, camp will pass away in like 20 years. And so I'm going to keep ringing that bell and keep running up and down and saying the sky is falling. The onus is completely on camp directors to understand the young people that we find working for us today at camps. And I know that it's in vogue and it's cute to sort of like youth bash and talk about how this incoming generation doesn't have any values or moral. Like, none of that is helpful. We were the incoming generation. When I was coming in at 19, I'm sure that I was doing things that my camp director was like, what the hell is this guy doing? I spun that into a successful career. So I just want to point that out to anyone's listening. Is like, if you are like harumphing about the young people at work at your camp and how you can't understand them, we were those people. We were those people. And now look at us. Your staff today will be us in 20, 25 years. So how do we bridge that as people bridged it for us before?
Excellent. Michael, a highlight or thing you'd want to leave us with?
Make a list.
Yeah.
Divide the list into two categories, what people do and what people say. And start imagining now what you wish people knew to do and knew to say. And to use the word that I guess I'm most known for, be specific. Be as specific as you possibly can. Examples are, if you can't do what you say you were going to do, give a heads up to the person who assigned you the task before they come to you. So never have somebody come and say, where is it? You said you have it done by today. That's one of the things on the list. Don't worry about, how it's spelled, laid out, or anything else. Just start making your lists of what people say. The second one is when you're asking for help, never go to somebody and ask for help. Go to somebody and say, here's what I've tried so far. Here's what's happened. Which, goes back to what Chris said, do your job. Don't come to me to solve where this kid's socks are. Okay. What have you done? Where have you looked? Who did you ask? And then come to, the president of the board of directors or the owner of the camp. Don't go there first. Make those lists. That's your curriculum. That's what you want to teach. Don't worry about how you're going to teach it yet or what the activity is. But we've always got to start with, what do we want them to know that in 2023, we expect that, they may know less of? Okay, that's fine. And when you've identified those things, now you've got a great start. You'll be less panicked. You'll be less anxious for sure, because now you can say, well, of these 12 things, what are the top 3 that I think would most affect the operation of camp? Narrow it down. And what if over 3 days of training, I did 2 of these over 3 days? That gives me 6. And that's the right place to start. I agree with Joe. He said it perfectly. It's a lot of work, but that's how the work starts, in my opinion. Make those lists. Define what we mean when we say professional.
Thank you. Gab, final thought from you?
Once you've made that list, make sure you're clear with the staff that you're hiring, especially the returning staff members, what our goal is for next summer within the framework of our mission, how we're going to do this together. And with these changes, are you on board? And help them make that decision. Because sometimes we go back to camp because that's what we know. And to let them know that this is the path that we're taking and this is how we're going to do it. And we'd love for them to be part of the team. But are they willing to do that hard work and put themselves out there that way, ask for help in the way that we need them to ask for help, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you. I think my final word on this is that it's important to accept our staff for where they are, not where we want them to be or where we're mad that they're not. And that's a lot less stress for you. And honestly, it's a lot less stress for them because they will understand, see, feel, pick up on your frustration, that they are not like the miracle staff of 2018 that just happened to be the last great summer that you remember. But if you've been a camp director long enough, every 5 or 6 years you get that staff that you're like, I don't think we could be any better than this. And then it's a slump and then it builds up to that point again. But meet them where they are, I think is the best part of this. Thank you all. Great wisdom, stunning conversation. I'm so grateful to the 5 of you for sharing all this and for putting such thoughtful energy into this. We want to take a second today to thank our sponsor, UltraCamp. Exclusive to CampHacker listeners, you can increase your staff retention by staying in touch. Keep in touch with them all year long. Download UltraCamp's staff communication calendar that includes pre-written prompts. You can do that for free by visiting ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker. You know that you chose to get into this camping world because of the reasons that are personal to you, because you wanted to be a good leader, because you love working with children, because you love the transformation. UltraCamp knows that it wasn't because of the paperwork. So that's why they built this platform that can be as flexible and affordable as it is powerful, so that you can keep your program moving forward. With UltraCamp, you get pricing that is transparent and flexible, and that means you can rest easy and focus on what's important, your campers and your staff. With UltraCamp, you have a low minimum entry, clear pricing with no hidden costs, flexible payment terms, and no long-term contracts. UltraCamp's goal is to help their clients spend less time in the office and more time doing what they love. Do you want to know if UltraCamp is the right fit for you? They offer free customized demo sessions so you can see the software in action. Sign up at ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker. I'm going to now move us on to our tool of the week.
Tool of the week.
We always ask that folks come to us with a tool. If you're a longtime CampHacker listener, you would have listened to the last episode, which is all tools of the week. But we'll continue to ask that each person bring one tool that they think will be useful to another camp director. Joe, do you mind starting us off today?
No, I don't mind starting you off today. My tool of the week is actually two, but it's the same thing, just slightly different. The world is moving towards USB-C. Even the iPhone will start to be USB-C soon. A Ugreen USB charger, the one that I've put in, it fast charges. If you haven't been a USB-C person, I've had a Google Pixel for years, as people who listen to the show would know. This has 3 fast charging ports and a USB-A port to charge, and it can handle a ridiculous, like 65 watts, so it can charge everything really quickly. In fact, as I was listening to people speak, I ordered another one for camp. Like, I literally was like, there's a $5 off coupon. I should go get that. That is great, because at camp, there's more and more things we're plugging in. On the secondary part, the second part of this is that I also put a powered USB 3 hub, which is all USB-A plugs, but it's 11 of them. And so we got new walkie-talkies that we bought off Amazon, and they all can be charged with USB-A, but instead of having to have 11 plugs, you only need one plug. And then all those USB-A goes into a single USB charger, and they all have on-off buttons for each charge thing. It is brilliant, and it is well worth the investment if you are plugging a lot of one thing and you don't want to take up a ton of actual receptacles.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joe. Gabs, what's your tool?
I don't know if we already had this as a tool, but I think it's important to bring it back. Buying used Lego in bulk. So I have a link for our Kijiji site, but there's so many things you can do with Lego. Like, we need to pick teams. Here, grab some Lego and look at the colors. Let's create something together, but we each can only use one hand, and we're going to do that together. And then, that's staff training stuff, but then, cabin groups during rest hour, or even coming up with a theme within the dining room. Imagine each dining room have a centerpiece done by Lego. There's so many options, but at the baseline for me, it's a wonderful fidget toy for listening and keeping your hands busy. But you don't even need to come up with these ideas. You can have your staff come up with the ideas, and Lego, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And I love just having boxes of Lego at camp. And I think I need to replenish a little bit. So used Lego.
That is great. There's a past tool of the week that I brought in, which is a book wholly on facilitating using Lego.
Ooh.
It is a really, really interesting book.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
We'll check that out.
Yeah. Michael, what's your tool of the week?
And Legos don't have to be charged with a USB charger. Let's add that.
Indeed.
The story of an emperor's new clothes, and the emperor walks down in a parade, is naked. No one says anything except the little child. My very first training book, I mentioned that there's an emperor's new clothes thing about flip charts. No one ever says anything out loud, but no one can see what anyone has ever written in the history of people on the lower half of a flip chart. No one has. And we all pretend that they can see it. And it's akin to the modern, the stupid PowerPoint slides that people put up there and say, I know you can't see this in the back, but so why make it bigger? I believe that every camp in the world should have at least, please, just one super heavily built, it will never die, it will last 3 more generations flip chart. And here's the secret. It's got to be the tallest that's manufactured in the world. And the tallest one that's made, I think I've bought 7 of them over the years, is manufactured by a company called Daylight, DA-LITE, and it is 6 feet tall. It has adjustable legs. This is not one of those pretzel thin spaghetti jobs that you go and you can knock it over if you sneeze and the pad keeps falling off. And if you're using it outside, et cetera, those are stupid. You got to have one really great flip chart. And the kind I'm describing is also a stand. So if you want to put up signs or things like that, there, it won't fall over in a typhoon, and it folds, and it's great. I researched this for you yesterday, and the company doesn't sell them directly anymore. I ordinarily would not recommend Amazon. I'd like you to go to an individual company and manufacturer, but since we're from all over North America listening to this, at least, I'm afraid that's the most efficient way to do it. So go to Amazon, type into the search D305. That's D as in Dave, 305, portable easel, EASEL. And it won't be the first thing that comes up. It'll be maybe in the second row, but you're looking for that number. That's the model number. It comes in black or gold, and make sure you're getting the one that's 6 feet tall with adjustable legs. And it is fantastic. People can see it from many kilometers away. And you'll be very happy that you did it. I will tell you that when I priced it yesterday, it was about $317 US. It's a lot of money, but this is a tool that you're going to use for training, for campfires for your kids. I can't imagine a day where you wouldn't use this at camp, and it'll last forever. I don't get any financial reimbursement from these folks, but I'll finish by saying I wish I did, because people who have seen me and my flip chart have said, where did you get a flip chart that's tall? I can actually see it. So I highly recommend it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael. Chris, what's your tool?
I'm going to keep this quick. So just, I'm going to sneak 2 in real quick. This is just a reminder to everyone listening. With the holidays coming up, just want to remind you all that so much stuff like Christmas and holiday stuff is going to suddenly be 50 to 70% off. Now is the time to buy camp supplies. You want fairy lights? Boom. Right? You want weird wreaths for whatever arts and crafts you're doing? It's all there for you. Same thing. I'll say the same thing as we approach Easter. Because Easter eggs, hollow Easter eggs, you can use them for any sort of program. All right. So that's my low key tool of the week. But my actual tool of the week is a little card game called Love Letters. Love Letters is a game that you play with, I think up to 4 people, and you're just trying to get your love letter to the princess. There are also other non-hetero, non-gendered skins of this game. We introduced this to camp a couple of years ago, and the kids ate it up. The other thing is that it's a great game. It plays in 5 minutes. I was on a bus to a nerd convention in Philadelphia the other day, and with me and my friends played Love Letters on the bus, and it occupied us for about half an hour, 35 minutes. It's easy to play, it's easy to learn, and it's easy to stick in your pocket. So I think just everyone should have it, because if there's ever a lull in conversation, hey, let's play Love Letters. Boom.
Excellent. I'm always down for a good game recommendation. Thank you. My tool of the week is something that I've been looking at. I just want to bring it to people's attention. I encourage you to start thinking about it, because I think it's going to affect, I don't know how it's going to affect camp exactly yet, but I know that it's going to affect all of our lives. I have spent the last probably 3 or 4 months playing around with different AIs with different purposes. And so the one I'm putting in the show notes today, again, go to camphacker.tv /podcast to find the show notes from this episode. But the one that I am has really made a splash this week, you're going to hear this probably a month after we record this, but is called ChatGPT. And you can put a question to this AI and it generates very interesting answers. It's hard to tell that it's written by a computer instead of a person. So it has made several of my friends think, was that thing I read on the internet just generated, or did somebody actually write it? So it's interesting. Yes, I don't know what it is yet. I think it'll affect all of our lives in some way. I got an invite early to a couple of the generative art AIs that you can put in a cue or a style, and it'll just generate some art based on that style. Like you can say, woman wearing a muffler, driving a motorbike in the style of Soviet propaganda posters. And it'll, give you 4 or 5 options. You can tell it what you like. It sort of does more on that. And it's fascinating. It can provide stuff like you don't have the right picture of kids doing a particular activity, and you know that you could just sub in an illustration of that. It would help you tell the story of what your camp does. You can just ask it to provide that, and it'll provide that. So I would be looking at sort of generative tools, either writing or art. There's music ones too, which I have not played with, but I've mostly been thinking about the art one. And then this ChatGPT really came up a lot in the last 2 weeks. So I don't know. Is it a tool? It's going to be, but it's something that I think people should be thinking about.
Travis, I think you're underselling it. Like, it can literally write your entire promo for summer camp if you ask it the right things. It can do like a whole series of drip emails if you work through it is the change that will take knowledge workers out. But I have thought through it with my staff here already this week about how it's not going to take us out as camp directors, because there's still physical things we need to do. But writing our blog posts or writing our advertising, or we don't need to worry about that anymore per se.
So
if you do it correctly.
Maybe that's the tool part of it. The tool part is it frees you up to do the thing that you're particularly skilled at, not the thing that you've been saddled with, because all camps need this. Maybe it just frees you up to do that particular way of thinking, focus on the mission that an AI can't do. Mixed feelings about it for sure, but it is no doubt interesting, and it's coming at us. So there we go. Thank you, Joe, for that little bit of reinforcement. I want to thank everybody for their contributions today, for all the smart things that you've all been saying. I would encourage everybody who is watching on YouTube or listening to this while they are driving, walking the dog, or doing dishes, to go to camphacker.tv/podcast, check out the show notes. Michael has been kind enough to put in some things that we'll include in the show notes. You can click on it on your phone, or you can go to camphacker.tv/podcast and look up some of Michael's upcoming courses. And I definitely would encourage you, if you haven't seen Michael's books, to go check out Michael's books. Michael, what would you say is the best starting place for someone who hasn't read one of your books but is inspired by some of the stuff you've said today?
Wow. Skill of the day, what great leaders of young people do and say, has 20 or 25 specific skills and creative lesson plans to teach every one of them. So all of them can be plugged in. That's one place where people start.
Yeah. Yeah. And good for the topic of kind of starting from basics and giving them confidence.
Gabs, who helped with the production, I have to mention the most recent book. Thank you, Gabs. Growing Great Qualities in Kids, which is my laser beam book, which describes the technique in which we go from qualities to conduct. So in terms of our discussion today, those would be the two that are most relevant, with thanks to Gab for the Growing Great Qualities.
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us today, Michael.
It was a pleasure. I enjoyed it. I have shopping to do now.
Absolutely. Gabs, Joe, and Chris, always a joy to spend time with you and share big ideas. And again, camphacker.tv/podcast if you want to figure out how to get in touch with these people or ask them any follow-up questions. Once again, I want to take a second and thank our executive producer of podcasting, Matt Wilfred, for taking care of us, allowing us to just be creative talkers, and he pulls all this together and sends it out to those of you who are listening or watching. So, Matt, we're grateful to you. And I hope that today's talk has been encouraging, give you a bit of focus. I know that many people I'm talking to are feeling dejected, like they don't know where to start. I think if you start with some of the stuff today, you are going to make some of the right decisions when preparing for this summer. So thank you for listening, and thank you for the evening, friends.
The Camp Hacker podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening.
Hey, Camp Pros. We love that our industry is built on sharing. In order to foster that spirit, if you've gotten even one good idea from a Go Camp Pro podcast, a masterclass, from the Summer Camp Pros group on Facebook, at a conference, or wherever else, we ask that you give credit where credit is due. That way, we can encourage Camp Pros to keep freely sharing their brilliant ideas and make the camp industry better. Thanks very much.
Hey, it's Travis. Camp directors often tell me they're just too tired to take on anything new. That's exactly why my free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic exists. It doesn't add work, it shows you progress. Quick, free, repeatable, you'll know if your systems are paying off without the guesswork. Try it today at camp.mba/Travis. That's camp.mba/Travis.